What's going on, Chi Alpha? It's so exciting to be back with you guys. I've missed you the last 2 weeks, but major life update. In the last 2 weeks, I finally have gotten married to the love of my life, Elena. We had a great time on our honeymoon down in Florida, so we are so thankful that you guys are sticking with us. We're so thankful also for our awesome summer intern this year, Sarah Baker, for filling in for me in my absence. But today, I'm back. You're with me again, and we're ready to keep rolling. And I got some exciting news because today we are starting a brand new series with Francis Chan on Right Now Media called Greater Than. Let's get it. Very first words of the Bible are, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So do you believe that? You know, this statement used to be something that people took for granted. And people would say, well, of course everything was created by God. Just look at the design. But we are living and people are growing up in a much different time. And we are being told that this may not even be an option for belief. But the real question is, what do you believe? And have you ever really thought about it? Because fewer and fewer people are taking the time to think through the tougher questions in life. And because we are living in a time where multitasking is a way of life, we jump from one thing to another and we don't ever really stop. But when was the last time that you really stopped and you thought about, what am I doing here? Do I really have a purpose? And that's what I want you to do right now. And here's the reality. You are standing or sitting on a giant ball. A giant ball that is 2/3 water, and you're spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. So just think about that. Just think about that for a second. And think about how in the sky there is this giant ball of fire that is 93 million miles away, and somehow it never burns up. And that is the thing that's keeping us warm. And so as you're flying around that giant ball of fire, just sit there and think about your purpose, because how could you be an accident? Because many of us were just taught that we're just accidents. And so where does that mindset come from? Well, according to Wikipedia, the formation of our solar system began 4.6 billion years ago with the gravitational collapse of a small part of a giant molecular cloud, and most of the collapsing mass collected in the center, forming the sun, while the rest flattened into this protoplanetary disk in which the planets and the moons and the asteroids and other small solar system bodies were formed. So is that it? Is that the whole story right there? That there was just this molecular cloud that was always there? And somehow this molecular cloud exploded into the solar system as we see it now? And that's just the end of the story? Or is there something greater? That maybe all this wasn't just an accident, and maybe you weren't just an accident. In fact, the Bible says the exact opposite, that there are no accidents. And God says that even in his creation, in Romans chapter 1, verse 20, it says that ever since creation, even with his invisible and divine qualities, have been on display so that men are without excuse. And God says that you are able to see him so that you can recognize that there is something behind all of it, someone behind all of it. You can see all of his divine qualities. In fact, Psalm 19, it says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words whose voice is not heard. Their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. So God says the heavens are declaring his glory. Just look at the stars, study the stars, and you would see that the creator of all of this is glorious. And he is beyond us, that you and I are not the center of the universe. That there is someone who's different. And in the Bible, when the Bible describes us, they would describe him as different. The words and the verbs and the adjectives that they use to describe him being God, would be so much different than us. That this was not just some bigger version of us, but they actually call himself holy. Holy meaning different and completely set apart from the rest of us. So much so that when Moses asked if he could see God's face, he says that no man can see my face and live. He says that I am the being that created the heavens, and you on your tiny little planet, this tiny little speck in comparison of who I am, you can't see me. And in fact, Paul describes this same idea to Timothy when he's explaining to Timothy the presence of God. He says that God dwells in an unapproachable light. So there is this unapproachable being that exists that if I were to look at, I would just die. And the Bible says that he is. The Bible says that when Isaiah got to see some sort of glimpse of him, that there were these angels that were covering themselves up. Even the high angels, they were taking their wings and they were covering their faces and their feet, and they were shouting, "Holy, holy, holy," and everything was shaking around them. And so that means that they were just screaming out how different and how amazing this God really is. And so the thing that means is that you and I are not alone. And that all of this didn't and couldn't happen by accident. And this is what's cool about the Bible. It says this in Acts chapter 17, verse 24. It says this: "The God who made the world and everything in it, being Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in temples made by man, nor is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. And he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling place, so that they should seek God and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him. Yet he is actually not far from each of us." So here's what the Bible says. And in wrapping, this is what the Bible says: that the God who made us doesn't really need us. There is nothing or anything that we can do for him. But the fact that God gives us life and breath and everything. But here's even the better part. The awesome thing is that the Bible says that we are not an accident. And he is not an accident. In fact, God determined specific times and periods, and he decided when you would be born, and he decided where you would be born. And he is orchestrating different life events so that you can find him. And it says at the end of that passage that he is not far from each of us. So everything in your life that is leading towards God, he has orchestrated so that you might find your way toward him. So it isn't a coincidence that I am here right now. And it's not a coincidence that you're watching this video right now. But what the Bible says is that God determined you would be here and when you would be here. And he is pointing you to him right now. And the promise in that is that he's not far out of reach. So go out and find him.